Hello world, I received this email a couple of weeks ago, as you mentioned in your last video, and I should clarify here, my last video at the time that I got this was Occupy Wall Street, so that's what they're referring to. Anyway, as you mentioned in your last video, mediums such as YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, etc. have proved pivotal in recent political events, giving the people a certain amount of power over their governments that no generation has had before. However, in China, while the youth use the internet a lot, many of these sites are blocked, hindering any revolutionists from spreading the word of any plans. Do you think that this will stop any kind of civil movements completely, or if not, how do you think that they could overcome their government's censorship? From Sophie in London. Okay, so to reiterate the basic thesis of my Occupy Wall Street video, the world is seeing so many populist movements right now, like Occupy Wall Street or the Arab Spring, because with the internet, for the first time, a mass media medium belongs to the people. It's not that people haven't cared before about living under repressive regimes or lopsided distributions of wealth, it's just that until now we have not had a proper medium to discuss, clarify, and air our grievances. Now that we have the internet though, every single widely held grievance from every single corner of the globe will ultimately be aired, and we are seeing the very beginning of that now. So far, the first of these grievance airing movements have primarily taken place in two different sorts of places. One, places where personal freedom is so ingrained as a part of the culture that protesters have little to fear, and two, places where the oppression is so great that protesters have little to lose. That a massive pro-democracy movement has not yet broken out in China, I think has less to do with the internet censorship there, and more to do with the fact that China just doesn't fit snugly into either of those two categories. I mean, China definitely does have problems, and the problems they have there are pretty similar to the ones we have in the US that have led to this Occupy movement. The distribution of wealth in China is just as, if not more so, lopsided than here in the United States. Hundreds of millions of Chinese live in poverty with no upward mobility. There is plenty of corruption to go around within the Chinese government, but Chinese discontent does not yet outweigh the fear of what the Chinese government might do to anyone who dares to express said discontent. Censorship of the internet in China isn't so much about cutting off the organization of potential protests as it is about reminding the Chinese people of why they are afraid to protest in the first place, to remind them that Big Brother is very definitely still watching. Any attempt to truly censor the internet, short of shutting it all down, is futile. I mean, yes, blocked websites are an annoyance, but I know from first-hand experience that Chinese youth are smarter than their censorers. When I was in China a couple of years ago and I made those China vlogs, I naturally wanted to get to YouTube, but YouTube was blocked, so a few Chinese students showed me how to get around the Great Firewall of China. And it was really very simple. We just used a proxy. And I mean, yeah, when the Chinese government figures out that a proxy is being used, they go ahead and block it. But for every proxy that they block, 3 new ones show up. Whether the Chinese government likes it or not, the media is opening up there just like everywhere else. I mean, they can and have slowed it down a little bit, but there's no way for them to reverse the overall trend. The fact of the matter is that China now has a medium to discuss, clarify, and air their grievances, and that medium will ultimately be used. They're just, understandably so, a little bit timid about it. You would be too. And in fact, the Chinese people have already begun to find their voice. In February of this year, at the same time that the Arab Spring was beginning, anonymous online calls for a Jasmine Revolution in China resulted in protests in 13 cities across the country. Questionable charges made by the Chinese government against activist artist Ai Weiwei that he owes almost $2 million in taxes have resulted in over 30,000 donations online, and people throwing fresh fruit wrapped in Chinese money onto his front lawn. I mean, these are baby steps, yes, but these baby steps could be the first steps of what turns out to be one of the most important social movements in all of human history. Now let's play some chess. Alright, the black team has voted and their move is this, d7 to d5. Alright, White, how are you gonna respond?
If you like what you just saw, if Dan put you in a state of awe, subscribe to him and click the orange button. It really means something. If you do that, that'd be really cool.